Hi, everyone. Nice to see you tuning in. You've probably heard this before. No oil means bland food, boring meals, and a diet that won't last. Today, we are taking apart that myth. I'm Heather McDougall here with Stacy Cross, and we're talking about whether you actually need oil to cook, add flavor, or enjoy your food. We'll show you why oil isn't necessary, what to use instead, and what you can actually do to make food taste good without using oil. So if you've ever thought you could never give up oil, this show's for you. So great to see you, Stacy. Nice to have you here with
Good
me.
good to be here, Heather. I'm excited about this topic. Let's get into it.
It's important. I think one of the things that separates us from so many plant-based programs is that we don't cook with oil or use oil in our cooking. And, that's a big one. And we found that it doesn't add to the flavor of your food and you don't need it to cook with. And, lots of people think that you do. So we're going to get into just some ways to cook without oil and saute without oil and just really get into some misconceptions about why you need it to cook. Um, Stacy, did you want to get started?
Sure, yes, definitely. Well, first of all, let me just say this topic is near and dear to my heart because I will never forget what almost 9 years ago when my husband and I think I've shared before, went vegan overnight and just had to make our way meal by meal, figuring out how we wanted to eat from then on. I remember like a couple days into our veganness, somebody told us, yeah, and you also shouldn't use oil. And I will never forget the feeling I had. I was like, I can't do this. There is no way I can give up oil after I've already just given up animal products. And, I couldn't even envision it. I was in the habit of pouring oil into the pan before I made anything. My eggs in the morning, if I made a stir fry, I mean, anything at all. I am sure that I at least sprayed the oil. I did the oil spray, and we can talk about that in a minute too. But so I really can feel for people who are really struggling with this transition away from oil because it does feel sort of unimaginable, mostly because it is our culture here in the United States and beyond, in much of the Western world and much of the Eastern world as well, to use oil in our cooking. And it's very hard to step away from that culturally ingrained concept around cooking that you need oil. You've got to have oil for cooking. And so we should talk a little bit about why oil even came to be, what oil is, what is it there for? And really what it is that you have taken whatever food, and for these purposes, we're talking about vegetable oils, right? I mean, there's all different kinds of oils, but vegetable oils, seed oils, and the like are basically where you've taken a whole food and you've extracted only the fat. You've gotten rid of all the vitamins, nutrients, fiber, water, all the things that make that thing a whole food, and you've pulled only the fat out of it, and it's in liquid form, and that is what cooking oils are. And so it's actually oil, as it turns out, is one of the most highly processed foods that exist on the planet, if not the most highly processed food. It's very interesting, especially right now. There's so much talk about processed foods and the dangers of processed foods, but those same people are talking about the importance of getting your oil, the importance of eating, especially your olive oil. Many of you have probably heard that before. And so it's a juxtaposition that doesn't really make any sense from the standpoint of human health. It doesn't make any sense to say we should be minimizing our intake of highly processed foods and also increasing our intake of oil. So let's talk about where that comes from. So oil, as extracted, it's an incredibly calorie dense fat, straight fat, like I said. And what it does is it adds calories to whatever you're making. And that's essentially the biggest role that it plays, is it adds calories. Now, of course, we use it because it keeps food from sticking to things, and that's the appeal of it. Some people even think that it adds flavor, although that isn't even really true. What it adds is a a mouthfeel, a texture, sensation when you're eating your food that is different from when you eat food without oil. But it's really just adding calories, adding fat without adding to your satiety, your satisfaction at the end of a meal.
And I think, one of the big problems is people just use it without even thinking about it. You can put a couple of tablespoons on your meal or in your soup, thinking it's a health food, or not even realizing how many calories and how many grams of fat that they're adding with really not any additional flavor. So that's one thing that I really want people to be aware of, is how that oil is being used and what it's doing to your food. So thanks, Stacy. I see lots of people on a call talking about, how they cook without oil and how it's hard in the beginning. It takes a little bit of an adjustment, but all change does. But once you get used to it, once you get used to eating without oil, it's amazing how delicious food tastes. And when that oil actually gets back into your food, you really notice it in a negative way. So
Absolutely true. And the thing that I alluded to earlier, where I said it doesn't actually add much flavor at all. I mean, some people can detect the flavor of oil, certain oils, and they like what that adds, but there's so many ways to add flavor to our food without relying on fat, liquid fat, right? And I alluded to the fact that actually what it's adding more than anything is a mouth feel, a sensation in your mouth. It basically coats the inside of your mouth. And if you haven't gotten away from oil before, stopped eating it and eliminated it in your cooking, you probably really have become accustomed to that sensation and that mouth feel. And it does, like you said, Heather, it takes time to get used to not feeling that way. But once you adjust to not having your mouth coated with fat when you eat your food, going back is not enjoyable either. So often, and I've heard this said many times, we develop a palate for what we eat. You want what you eat, you crave what you eat, and you like what you eat. And so when you change what you eat in some significant way, there is an adjustment period. But once you adjust, suddenly you like it, you crave it, you desire it that way. And most everyone that comes through our 12-day program and learns the tenets of how to cook without oil, they report that first meal after, however long it's been since they've had oil, that first meal with oil is like disgusting to them. They hate the way it feels in their mouth. They hate the way it makes them feel in their bodies. Oftentimes they'll have intestinal distress because of it, because we are not designed to have a big glob of liquid fat poured into our food. We're designed really to eat whole foods in their natural form. And oil, even if it has some antioxidants, like in the case of olive oil, eat the whole olive. In that case, if that's what you're looking for, you eat a whole olive. You don't need the fat, the concentrated fat. It is not health promoting at all whatsoever, no matter what you've heard or how well it's been marketed.
absolutely. And it just adds extra calories and fat without giving you any additional feeling of fullness. So you just end up eating more food and then getting, more oil. And so it really is kind of a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Let's see. Why don't we talk about, oil and weight loss? We were talking about this yesterday. So many people end up going on a diet and they end up eating lots of salads, tons and tons of salads, but they put salad dressing full of oil all over their salads and they don't figure out why they're not losing weight. They're hungry because they're not getting the starches, the legumes. And they just get discouraged. And so that is a lot of the times just because of all the excess calorie and fat from salad dressing.
Yes, exactly, Heather. And oftentimes if you go to a restaurant where the nutritional information is available on their website, and you go and look at that nutrition information for all of the items on their menu, you will be shocked to find out that oftentimes the salads are the highest in calories and highest in fat items amongst many other foods and options that you would think would be much, much higher in calories and fat, even things like burgers and fries. And the reason is so often the salad dressing. Yes, there are other things that are thrown on salads these days to make them very high in calories, but the salad dressing itself is so high in calories and so high in fat. Now, one thing that if you have any relationship with the McDougall program or McDougall Health and Medical Center, and you've been following Dr. McDougall's teachings for years, one thing you know is that we don't count calories, we don't count fat grams, we eat when we're hungry and stop when we're full. But what we're eating is whole natural plant foods. When you get something as concentrated, highly, highly concentrated in calories and fat as oil is, we can no longer trust those natural hunger and fullness cues because oil will never trigger satiety in the same way that starches do, whole natural starches. And so I know you guys probably have had the same experience I have where it's like re-pouring the salad dressing and eating the whole salad and going, well, that was nice, but I'm not full at all. Or maybe I'm only full for half an hour. And that's because the fat laden oil doesn't do it for us in the way that starches do. So you can consume an incredibly high calorie salad, make no progress with your weight loss, and wonder what is going wrong because you feel like you're making great choices. And more often than not, the culprit is the oil. Heather, you know this just as well as I do. How many people come to the program, go through our 12-day online program, and the thing that they report is, I've been eating this way for decades and I've never been able to lose weight, and they never attacked the oil. And the minute that they go in and really take a close look at how much oil they're consuming, whether it's in processed and packaged foods, whether it's in going out to eat, fast food, even restaurant food, or whether it's actually using cooking oil in their cooking at home, they didn't realize how much of an impact that was making on their overall calorie intake each day. And that was the absolute reason why they were never able to lose weight. And the minute they eliminate it, we see that weight come off.
Absolutely. And, like I said earlier, a lot of times they're not even thinking about how much they're using. So if you do a food diary and really write down how much oil is getting into your meals every day, it might be really surprising. And that might be exactly what is hindering your weight loss. So we see that over and over again. That would be the first thing. Well, of course, the animal products are the first thing, but the free oils would, definitely be number two for hindering weight loss. And when eating a starch-based, starch-rich whole plant food diet, helps with your hunger. People think that you're going to be hungrier because you're not using oil, not using all those excess calories, and the opposite is true. You can actually eat until satiety and lose weight. So that's a really powerful thing for our patients. Do you want to talk a bit about how we do that? I mean, I can't tell you how many places I go, where I'm talking to the chefs, if I'm going out to eat, and I ask them, to make rice without oil or cook this without oil. And sometimes they'll look at me and say, you can't do that. I can't cook this without oil. And it's really quite easy. And I've instructed chefs all, in restaurants all over and taught them. But at home, when you have control over everything that goes in your food, cooking without oil can really be quite easy. And that's just using vegetable stock or water. I mean, that's what I use
Yes.
when I saute. At least baking is another thing, and we'll get to that in a minute. But sauteing veggies with broth or water just is so easy to do. And right there, you've eliminated, a couple tablespoons of olive oil or any type of oil. And that makes a huge difference in your cooking.
It's a huge difference because when you think about it, I believe a tablespoon of oil is around 120 calories. So let's say you're just sauteing some veggies, and let's just say you just free pour some oil in there. You probably very quickly and easily can free pour at least a couple tablespoons. Well, what you've done is you've taken vegetables that are basically almost no calories at all whatsoever, and you've added 250, 240, something like that calories to your veggies. And you can see how it just very quickly, adds unnecessary calories. Also, in order to lose weight, no matter what you do to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit. What does that mean? Well, it means that you're taking in fewer calories than you are burning, doing all the things that you do in a day. Most people, if they're losing weight at a healthy rate, have a calorie deficit around 300 calories, somewhere in the 200, 300, 400 calorie range. But really, 300 seems to be where people can comfortably sit in a calorie deficit in a time and be able to sustain that. You know, higher calorie deficits than that are not sustainable because you'll go hungry and your body will figure out very quickly you are way under eating, right? But around 300 calories is the deficit required to lose weight. I just said you're sauteing veggies and you add 2 tablespoons of oil and you're already almost to those 300 calories. You're at 240 calories. So there you go. You've already almost eliminated your entire calorie deficit for the day. So you see how just abstaining from the oil can make such an enormous impact in your ability to maintain a calorie deficit. But like you said, when you're sauteing those veggies, you can use water, you can use broth. I'll tell you honestly, I only ever use water, and I'll tell you why. At some point along the way, I realized something. If I'm sauteing veggies or making a soup, for example, I was buying all these expensive broths, you know, oil-free broth from Whole Foods and all this stuff and pouring it in and spending all my money on broth. And then I realized, wait a second, if I'm cooking these veggies in water and I'm seasoning them and they are getting all yummy and soft and good, they are creating their own broth. That's how you make broth. You cook veggies and you take the liquid that is formed from cooking those veggies down, and that is broth. And so there's no reason for me to cook with broth. Now, sometimes if I need like a real flavor punch, honestly, it's like when I'm hosting people. I don't worry about it too much with my own family. But if I'm having people over and I really want to knock them out of the park, I will add the veggie broth because it does add a little bit of depth of flavor. But for the most part, if you just water saute your veggies, those veggies will release their natural flavors and everything, and they will create their own broth. And so no need for broth, but if you want to use broth, that's great. Just remember that oftentimes those boxed broths or even like the bouillons and the pastes and all the different ways that you can do a veggie base or a veggie broth, those often contain oil. So you even need to turn over the package and make sure on the ingredients list that there's no oil added to that. Otherwise, you absolutely can make your own veggie broth. It's very, very easy. I don't do it myself because I am just not willing to take the extra time. I've done it many times, but I just haven't in recent years. But you can easily make your own veggie broth at home in a pot by cooking down vegetables and then straining out all of the actual veggie material and just keeping the liquid. And there you go. You have your own veggie broth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people do it all different ways. You can like freeze it in little ice cube trays, but you're right. Using water is fine. Sometimes if you're sauteing with onions or mushrooms or, vegetables that have a lot of water, you don't need to use anything. But it's just a really easy way to saute without oil. So, you've eliminated that right there. Another great thing that we love to use are silicone mats or parchment paper when you're roasting veggies. I love roasted vegetables, either in my air fryer or in my oven, but I'm not using oil to stop the vegetables from sticking to the pan. So if you just put down a silicone mat or a piece of parchment paper on your baking sheet, the vegetables will never stick. You can do
Yeah.
any vegetable, potato. I'll add seasoning to them. But it's such a great way to roast veggies. And then right there, you've eliminated all that oil. There's so many steps that you can take along the way when you're cooking to eliminate, a tablespoon here, a tablespoon there. And, before you know it, you've just cut out so many excess calories and fat grams from your meal. So lots of little steps that you can make that make a huge difference.
Definitely. And I get a lot of people asking me, okay, if I'm not going to use oil, how do I get the seasonings to stick to the veggies? And what's worked the best for me over time is I've realized I do need a liquid element. I need a liquid of some kind. And what I do is I will get like a Tupperware container and I put my veggies, my chopped veggies that I want to roast, I put them in there and then I add a liquid, whether it be veggie broth, whether it be just a little bit of water. Oftentimes for me, I use coconut aminos, or I've even used barbecue sauce. Sometimes I use like low sodium soy sauce, some kind of saucy thing. And I just use a little bit of it, maybe like a tablespoon of that in the whole container that I'm making. And then if there are any seasonings or anything like that, I'll throw them in there. And then I put the lid on the container and I shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it. And then, like you said, I use the silicone mat or the parchment paper. Now, one quick little note for everybody who's like, ooh, I don't know about cooking with silicone. I don't know. Well, just so you know, silicone, parchment paper is actually silicone, what's it called? Like glazed. So parchment paper, the reason why parchment paper doesn't stick to your food is that it has food grade silicone glazed on it. And so I know that glazed is not the right word. Please don't come after me in the comments. I just can't think of the right word, but that's what parchment paper is. Okay. And silicone has been highly, highly studied in terms of its safety up against foods. And we feel like with the research that's been done, the science shows right now that it is safe, that food grade silicone is safe to use. Who knows, in a couple decades, we may find out something different. But as of right now, we feel safe about using silicone, and parchment paper basically is exactly the same thing. They're both fantastic for roasting veggies and them not sticking to your pan.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wasn't, the parchment paper was just so wasteful that
Yes,
I just have silicone mats in different sizes. They have the half sheets for your air fryer if you use that. So it just works
me
great.
too.
So, little
Yeah.
hacks that make a big difference.
Mhm.
Let's talk a bit about baking. That's something that's, a little different. If weight loss is your goal, we don't want you to be doing lots of baking. So no matter what you do, it's going to be more calorie dense, than other whole food, plant-based items. But, if you are going to be baking, we understand there's special occasions, birthdays, you have your grandkids over, those types of things. So we have some great recipes on our website. There's a number of different ways that you can cook without fat. One of our favorites is using a prune puree. So it's just a softened prunes that you blend up and make into a really smooth consistency. Back in the day, they used to actually make prune puree that you could buy in a jar. Now I just make my own. There's a recipe on our website at drmcdougall.com. But that's a great thing to use. You can also use different fruit or squash purees like a pumpkin puree, applesauce, bananas. Everyone, lots of plant-based people have the things that they use. And then I think another favorite thing of mine is using silken tofu. Some recipes work really well with that. So those are the things that I like to use. Do you like to use anything different, Stacy?
All of those that you mentioned. I would say I use in baking, like if I'm making like a banana bread or I'm making pumpkin bread or anything like that. Of course, I use pumpkin or banana or whatever. But for example, I made my boys some brownies the other day and I used applesauce. That was what I used in the place of the oil. And then I used in place of the eggs, I made, flax eggs, like with ground flax seed and water. And easy. It's so easy and it's almost completely undetectable. Especially if you're used to this, you get to where you really prefer the pure taste of using things like fruit and veggie purees and things like that in place of oil. You realize, no, this tastes and feels better in my mouth than like the greasiness of that oil can sometimes add to a baked item. But yeah, I love doing that. And then in terms of like baking in a pan, again, you can use parchment paper. Now they have the parchment paper, liners like for muffin tins and for, loaf pans and things like that. And so that's what I do. I just use parchment paper whenever I bake.
I have silicone like bread molds and muffin tins. And so that, either one, again, the silicone or the
Yes.
parchment paper are great because you don't want to be, spreading oil all over your pans because that adds fat and calories right there. So those are great options. Go ahead.
Heather, I have to tell you one thing about the silicone. So I also am a huge fan of the silicone. And when I roast my veggies, more often than not, I use the silicone mat thing and stick it in my air fryer or whatever. But for whatever reason, when I'm baking, like a loaf in a loaf pan or muffin pan, I have the silicone version and I will make those and I will hand the thing out to my whole entire family. And everyone's like, this is so good. We love it so much. It's perfect. It tastes amazing. And all I can taste is silicone. I don't know why. And I'm the only person in my family that tastes it. So if there's anyone out there that's like, I cannot bake with silicone because I taste the silicone, you're not crazy. I mean, you might be, but not because you can taste the silicone. You're just like me, and that's okay. And so, in that case, I have found that parchment paper works better, and I don't taste the silicone when I use the parchment paper.
That's interesting. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, you never know. Everybody's got their things, and you just want to
It's
find what
like
works for you.
highly, yeah, it's my highly refined palate. I'm totally joking. I don't know. I do have like a really um, keen sense of smell. So I don't know if that impacts my ability to taste the silicone. I don't know. But somebody out there, put in the comments if you have that too. If you, when you bake with silicone, that way I don't feel so weird and lonely. Tell us if that's the case for you too.
Right. There's someone out there like you, I'm
There
sure.
has to be.
You brought up the egg replacer using the flax egg. That works. I like using like energy egg replacer or Bob's
Yeah.
Red Mill, like a powdered egg replacer. It's gluten free. It's made with tapioca flour, other types of flours. So you know, trying one of those out would work great. But there's some delicious baked goods that you can make, cookies and breads, and on our website, we've got a few chocolate recipes. So, there's a chance to be decadent. I just think if you are going to bake, doing it with the least amount of fat and calories is, a win-win for everyone. So, no reason to cook with all that stuff. Okay. So I think, what do you talked a little bit about how people notice, the change in the food after they've switched from oil, but I find that, people really start talking about how they're tasting the food tastes better rather than having their mouth coated with oil. They're really tasting, the flavors of, all the vegetables and starches in the dishes. So that's a huge win right there.
Yeah, it's great. And I really do think it's mechanically the fact that when you eat a glob of liquid fat, it coats the inside of your mouth. And so when you're no longer coated, you have the opportunity for the food to hit directly your taste buds and for you to feel the real textures and sense and experience the real flavors of the food. So yeah, it's just one of those things though, Heather, like you mentioned earlier, it just takes time. Please don't do this for one day and go, gosh, I could never do this long term. Give it some time. Your body is adjusting. Your body is an amazing, resilient machine, and it learns to live with what you give it. And just because it's learned to live with what you give it doesn't mean that that's the optimal diet for you or those are the optimal things that you're giving it. But it just like it adjusts and we adjust to our circumstances, your body has a transition period when you change your diet or you change your circumstances. It just takes a little bit of time. So, give it a good real try and try to see if you can challenge yourself. I mean, I'm a big fan of challenges. My patients seem to like challenges. So every once in a while, I'll issue a challenge to the group. And so if there was a challenge I could give us all in YouTube land to do together, it would be give it a week. Do 1 week of absolutely no oil anywhere in your diet. Now, I'm not saying you have to be perfect to have like great progress, but if you want to run a clean experiment, which I'm a big fan of, you really should eliminate it completely and see what happens after that week. So go ahead and take it out of everything. We haven't talked much about this yet, Heather. Maybe we can get into it about oil in packaged foods because it goes beyond, for sure, cooking at home. In fact, your at home cooking is probably the easiest place to eliminate oil. And so we need to talk about packaged foods. We need to talk about going out to eat and all of that. But what if we all gave it a week of no oil at all whatsoever, zero? And let's just see what happens. How do we feel? What does our skin look like? What happens on the scale with our weight? What kinds of impacts do you have from eliminating oil for a week? You are your own best experiment, so why not give it a try?
I think that's the best way to figure out, if it works and really see how it affects your body and your health. So I think that's a great challenge. I was thinking 30 days, but a week sounds more doable. So,
Yeah, we could start with a week. And then once everybody comes back and says, I loved it, I feel so much better, we can say, great, keep going. Let's do it for 30 days.
well, we're going to be doing these calls every 2 weeks. So we'll have to check in with
Oh,
them in two
good.
weeks. So,
Perfect. That'll be good. Let's be sure to do that.
so we did talk a little bit about dining out and how there's so many hidden oils in that. I mean, during our 12-day program, I do a whole talk on going out to eat because that's one of the things that trips people up the most. And it's not the animal products. It's the oils. It's the hidden oils that, sometimes the chefs don't even think about it. It's just on the cooktop and so that's really what hinders people a lot is the amount of times that they go out to eat in a week. But you can take a lot of steps to prepare yourself, and do the best you can. And one of them is just looking at the menu ahead of time and, calling ahead and letting them know that you've got these special needs and special requests and just focusing on the most simple foods that you possibly can. Steamed rice, baked potatoes, steamed vegetables, sauce on the side. But, if you go out to eat a lot, there's probably going to be some hidden oils getting in your food.
Yes, definitely. And that's why one of the first things we tell our patients is you need to try to minimize your going out to eat as much as you possibly can. And that doesn't have to happen all at once, but all of us could move more in the direction of eating at home more. Anytime that you are in control of your own food and what goes into it, you're better off from a health and weight loss perspective. It doesn't matter what diet you're eating, any diet that you're trying to follow or lifestyle that you're trying to follow is going to be made more difficult when you go out to eat a lot. Heather, along with what you said about, talking to the chef, sort of coaching the chef about how to prepare the food in the way that you need it to be prepared, is finding restaurants where you can find selections that are oil free or they are like willing to bend over backwards to make sure they make something for you oil free. To me, I vote with my money. And so I will give money to a restaurant that has healthy oil-free options, that is willing to work with me and makes it easy, doesn't act like I'm a burden. And those are the restaurants I'll stick with. And so if you're a person that for whatever reason, let's say you travel a lot or you have to be out a lot for work, you have a lot of meetings that are like dinner and lunch meetings and things like that. One of the best things you can do for yourself is really get to know the places around you or in the places you go that offer something that is totally oil free, because that's the way to minimize the damage if you are in a position where you do have to go out to eat a lot.
And I wouldn't necessarily recommend seeking out vegetarian or vegan restaurants. I mean, I looked for Japanese, Thai, Chinese, Mexican, those types of restaurants. You tend to have the food that I'm looking for, simple starches, vegetables that can be made without oil. So that's definitely where I would focus on first.
Yeah, I agree completely. Oftentimes it seems like the vegetarian and vegan restaurants, they're trying so hard to knock it out of the park for people who wouldn't ordinarily come to the restaurant and have been dragged along with a friend or something. And so they do add a lot of a lot of salt, a lot of oil, oftentimes a lot of sugar and lots of really calorie dense things like, nut-based creams and things like that. And so oftentimes a vegetarian or a vegan restaurant has fewer options than like an ethnic restaurant, like what you're talking about, Heather. I mean, this is one thing that your dad used to talk about all the time is that the longest lived and healthiest populations in all of human history subsided on primarily starches at the center of their diet. And when we look at Asian cultures and their reliance on rice, and we look at Middle Eastern cultures and their reliance on various grains and legumes, lentils, things like that, and we look at Indian culture and how very plant-based it is and plant-centric and whole plant starches. And it's oftentimes what you'll find is that in these cultures and in these cuisines, the addition of fat, the addition of things like coconut milk and creams and dairy and things like that are actually pretty modern additions. They were used very rarely back in the generations that were very well controlled with their weight, back when they were eating more whole food, plant-based at the center of their diets, and everybody was lean and healthy and all of that. These additions that we have of adding a bunch of extra salt, a bunch of extra fat, and things like that are generally pretty modern additions. And unfortunately, oftentimes it's come with the westernization of a lot of these cultures and their cuisines. And so, really, what we want to do is we want to get back to some of these ancient, age old types of eating patterns that we know from studying all of human history and health, that those are the dietary patterns that lead to wellness and help us to avoid heart disease and diabetes and overweight and obesity and all of the things that are plaguing us so terribly now.
Thanks, Stacy. So we talked a bit about eating out. So very important thing to, take some steps to eat without oil. Another area that we don't have a whole lot of control over our food, you mentioned packaged foods. So that's
Yeah.
a place where there's a lot of hidden oils, and where label reading is incredibly important. And that's what we recommend all of our patients do, when they're starting out on this lifestyle is, flip over the box, make sure there's no added oils in your foods because that adds a lot of excess calories and fat. So there's a number of packaged products that you can buy that don't have added oils. And there's a packaged product list on our website, drmcdougall.com. So you can see them there. But that can be a huge hindrance to people if they're eating a lot of packaged foods and not paying attention to how much oil is in those foods.
Yes, absolutely. And oftentimes, what people will do is they'll turn over the package and they think, oh, fat, I'm looking for fat. And so they look at the fat grams and they're like, and they don't really know like what's a good amount of fat grams, what's good, what's bad. That's not really what we're looking for, because again, when you have a whole plant food and they all have some fat, and it has fat in it, and that is used in a packaged product, fat is going to show up. So just because you turn it over and you see 5 grams of fat, that doesn't mean that's a bad food to eat. If it's made of whole plant foods and there's no additional added fat in the form of oil or butter or whatever, then that may be a perfectly fine thing to eat. We still do want to eat, generally speaking, low fat, especially for weight loss. But what the really vital thing to do is to turn over the package and look at the ingredients list. That's where you find out if there are oils added, and that's added fat. And remember, added fat is a different thing. It acts differently in our bodies. Our bodies respond to it differently than they do to whole natural plant foods that contain fat. The fat in those things are protective, and they're protected by the fact that they come in the vehicle of the potato or whatever it is, and they have fiber and water and vitamin and nutrients, and your body has to like break that whole thing down to even access the fat in that food. That is what our body is made to do. Our body is not made to just swallow liquid fat, and to be able to process that in a way that doesn't include storing it on your body as body fat. I remember a couple of years ago, Heather, I had a patient tell me, oh, I was looking at the nutrition information on sweet potatoes, and this sweet potato has, 5 grams of fat, and this sweet potato has 4 grams of fat. This is just an example. And she's like, so I obviously need to eat the one with the 4 grams of fat. And I was like, no, because there's no nutrition label on a potato. A potato really is a potato. And when it comes with its natural intact fat in the thing, whatever that thing is, um, specifically for the whole natural plant starches, we don't have to worry about fat grams. We don't worry about that stuff. It's the packaged items. And again, it's not the fat grams don't tell the whole story. We have to look at the ingredients list and see if there's added fat, added oil. That's the stuff that gets us in trouble.
Absolutely. That's another thing. I don't want to get into a whole nother myth, but everyone thinks that we're a fat-free diet. We're on no fat program, and that's not true. We just
Not at
don't want
all.
you adding the free oils to your diet. Our diet is, I don't know, between 5 and 15% fat. On average, there's fat in carrots and corn and potatoes and oats and everything. It's just like you said, Stacy, in its whole natural form, exactly how we were supposed to eat it. And that's how we want you to get your fats. And that's really the
Yeah.
most healthy way.
And we don't deny at all that you need fat. you have essential fatty acids that we need for our bodies to function optimally. They're found very easily in whole plant foods. So you don't have to go out of your way to try to find them. They are there in your whole natural plant foods, your whole natural starches. So you're going to get what you need.
Thanks, Stacy. Let's see. Can we talk a bit about just ways that we offer support if people are wanting more information to learn about more about our lifestyle and how to cook without oil? We've talked a little bit about our 12-day online program, which is a great way to learn how to make a lifestyle change. But we also have the Starch Solution Community, which is a subscription-based club where people can, share meal ideas and how they cook without oil, and just a great place to feel like you're part of a community and supported in this lifestyle.
Yes, we love the Starch Solution Community, Heather, don't we? It's just so wonderful. And it's really been such a wonderful resource for people trying to eat this way because let's face it, most of us who are trying to eat this way, we're swimming upstream and we don't have a lot of people in our life that are trying to do this with us. So it's really nice to have a community where there are other like-minded individuals who are really trying to regain their health, lose weight, whatever your goal may be. There are other people in the community that are trying to do the same thing. And you mentioned earlier the list of approved packaged and canned items on our website, which is fantastic. It's so good. But you know what is even better than that? Is other people trying to eat this way and discovering new products all the time that are fantastic and totally McDougall approved. And to find out about that kind of stuff, you really kind of have to interact with people live, like in real life on our community. And it's really wonderful. There's always discussions going on over there. People always sharing products, new things that they're trying, new recipes, all that stuff. Fabulous, fabulous for support as you're trying to adopt this lifestyle. Less than $1 a day. You can start and quit the subscription anytime you want. I mean, it's very low entry and the amount of support that you receive is phenomenal. We have a couple live calls every week through the Starch Solution Community. So it's more than worth its value. I mean, it's beyond, far beyond what we ask for you to participate in the community. So come and join us there if
It's
you
been so
can.
fun for us too. You can hear Stacy
Yes.
talk about it. We've just learned so much from everyone in our community and have just had a lot of fun with it. So
Yes.
you can learn more about all of that on our website, drmcdougall.com. Hopefully, through listening to this call, you've realized that oil is not necessary for whole food, plant-based cooking. In fact, it's something that we don't recommend that you cook with. It's not a health food, and it's certainly not something that you should be eating if weight loss is your goal. There's all sorts of flavor that can be found in our way of cooking, adding spices and salt and pepper and sauces, and just the flavor of the food comes out all on its own without needing that oil. So hopefully you'll take us up on our challenge, a week, 2 weeks, 30 days, whatever. Just take those steps to eliminate oil from your meals and, write down what happens, take note of what happens, and we'd love to hear about it.
Sounds great. Can't wait to hear how everybody does. So hopefully we can follow up in a couple weeks when we're back here on YouTube. But hey, if you're a part of the Starch Solution community, go ahead and post over there as you go on your challenge, how things are going. And otherwise, you can always comment on this video and just let us know how you're doing. We'd love to help support you as you run this experiment. Should be fun.
Absolutely. That's why we're doing these calls. We want to give you hope and inspiration and support to embark on this journey or continue on it. So hopefully this call was helpful. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for being here, Stacy, and we will see you all in 2 weeks. Take care. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.